This is Selekane from Global Conference Television, changing the world, one inspired and transformed person at a time.
Please keep watching Global Conference TV.
Please keep watching Global Conference Television.
You are watching Global Conference Television.
Changing the world,
One inspired
and transformed person at a time.
In about February of 2015, an email arrived from Mrs. Michelle, because Mrs. Michelle wanted to say thank you to us. She had done that for the medical staff. She had done that for the office staff. Now it was our turn. And she stood up there in that beautiful, have you ever been in that little amphitheater or theater inside the Nelson Mandela Foundation? It's beautiful. And on the podium, behind the podium on the wall, it says the Nelson Mandela Center for Memory. And she was introduced by the chief executive of the foundation, Seroka, and all the police stations. And then she spoke to us like I'm speaking to you, and she said she would pick out a face here and a name there, and she would remember an incident where we were somewhere in the world. And she said, "You were always with my husband." And sometimes at significant personal sacrifice, you were always there. You saw him when he was happy, when he was sad, when he was angry. You were always there. And I just want to say thank you. So when I do these talks, I always like to make them quite personal. It's really not about Mandela, it's about what he taught me, and what he taught us as a protection unit. And the first thing I'll say right there is that, guys, don't forget to say thank you. It's such a small thing. But this gracious lady, in mourning, still dressed in black, by the way, in terms of culture and tradition, stood up there and said to us, thank you. Do you know how that resonated with us? Because we were struggling in our own ways to kind of put this to bed and get this cliched closure. That day, I believe, I knew it was over. And I can tell you that I got closure there. So that's how it ended for me. That's how I got my closure. So where did it all start then? If that's the end, what was the beginning? And how did this white guy become one of the team leaders of Mandela's protection team? And I always stress, guys, I was only one of the team leaders. It wasn't all about me. We had 4 teams, 2 here and 2 in Cape Town. I was the commander of the VIP protection unit here in Johannesburg. And it started on the day he was released, this 11th of February 1990. Actually, somewhere between the 2nd, when de Klerk made that historic announcement, and on the 11th, when he actually walked out of Victor Verster prison, de Klerk signed all of those announcements into law. And with that law, it ended the work and the functions of the special branch, or the security branch, where I worked. I was a member of the notorious John Vorster Square security branch. Please get that. And literally at the stroke of a pen, that security branch had no more work, because all the illegal organizations and the illegal people were now legal. So we had no more work. So what to do with this very green, rather wet behind the ears lieutenant in 1990? I was saying, you can start the VIP protection unit. And I did. Looking back on it now, I see, I'm so thankful for that, because I inherited one of the very first multiracial units in the security branch. How's that for an irony? And I can remember sitting there in the tea room while this announcement was being made. The TV was kind of on in the corner there. And you know, cops don't pay much attention to what politicians say in Parliament, really. But somebody said, hang on a minute, just what did he say? Turn that up. And here's de Klerk announcing, I'm going to release Mr. Mandela unconditionally. And I'm going to unban the ANC, the PAC, the SACP, and all these community organizations. And it's like, that rocked our world like you won't believe. So here I started this VIP unit. Now fast forward that movie 4 years later to the 10th of May 1994. What happened on the 10th of May 1994? That's the day Mandela swore the oath of office as our first democratic president at the Union Buildings. But he also did something else on his inauguration day. He flew by helicopter from the Union Buildings to land on the roof of what was the Witwatersrand Technikon right next door to Ellis Park, And the motorcade drove him around the corner to the president's suite, and he attended a soccer match between Zambia and South Africa that unsurprisingly is now known as the Nelson Mandela Inauguration Challenge. It's continued since then. And he walked onto the field as presidents do and shook hands with the teams and greeted them. For those of you who think that Madiba magic started a year later on the 24th of June 1995 when we beat the All Blacks, it didn't. It started on the day he became our president, because the score was 0-0 at half-time when Madiba came to the field to greet the teams. By the time he walked back up the tunnel, got into the lift and came up outside Louis Late's president's suite 3 minutes later, the score was 2-0 to Bafana. Some half-time team talk, right? And he immediately made his apologies to the SAFA officials. He said, I've got to go back to Pretoria to host a lunch for the 184 heads of state and heads of government who'd come to my inauguration. Can you remember who was there, guys? Fidel Castro, Yasser Arafat, Gaddafi, and all the other dictators of our day, who, by the way, in terms of the precedence of heads of state, there's an international order of protocol. And guess who is number 1, 2, and 3 on the list of heads of state? Those who've been in office the longest. Guess who they are? Those ones that I've just mentioned. My job as the commander of the VIP unit was we secured the 15 hotels that hosted those 15 heads of state and government. And it was an unbelievably busy time. It's like a misty cloud in my memory, but we finally got them up the highway to arrive in reverse order of precedence, 2 minutes apart. Now you walk up to a dictator and tell him, sir, you've got to leave now. Good luck with that. But we got them up the highway, and somebody very bright on that inauguration committee, I don't even know who it was, but it was a stroke of genius to say, let's put 60,000 soccer fans into Ellis Park. Let's televise the inauguration proceedings from the Union buildings on those big screens, because that is 60,000 fewer people clogging up the M1 while I'm trying to move 184 motorcades, and 60,000 fewer people clogging up that lawn where there wasn't really space for 6 more people, never mind 60,000 more people. That was a stroke of genius. So Madiba makes his apology. He gets into the car, and all that must happen is the car must drive back out down the ramp and go to the helicopter next door. When we see him trying to get the door open, which might to you sound like a very simple thing, just flick an elbow. No, it's a 3.8-ton armored BMW. You don't just flick your elbow, especially when you're in your 70s. You need a team leader standing outside there to give that thing a nice sharp tug to get it open. So the team leader, this was the segregated days, it was only ANC security guys looking after Madiba. I was like an outsider, but I was just there because I was the commander of the VIP unit. And I went there to do what I would normally have done if the clerk had been coming to rugby. He gets out of the car and he walks around the bonnet of this BMW, and the only person standing against the wall next to that ramp is an old school police colonel. His eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger because the president is walking directly towards him like this. He still hasn't said anything to us. All the officials have gone back in there to watch the second half. There's maybe 12 security guards around him at this time. All of us are confused. And he stops in front of this colonel, puts out his hand, and says to him, Colonel, I just want you to know that today you have become our police. I'm now the president of this country. But you need to know that there's no more you and us. You are now our police. Guys, this colonel was near the end of his career, and he had the lines on his face to show that he'd been around the block. And he started crying. And tears ran down those lines on his face, and they were dripping like this onto that wooden floor. And Madiba just patted him on the shoulder and he said, "It's okay, Colonel. I just needed you to hear that from me today."
You are watching Global Conference Television.
Changing the world, one inspired
and transformed person at a time.